Hey everybody, welcome to the video. We are finally here, Daytona Speed Weeks. We have the Daytona 500 right around the corner with the Millie Maker coming up this weekend. But first, we have the Daytona Duels to set the lineup for the Daytona 500 on Sunday, with the first one starting at around 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, February 17th, the day when you are watching this video. Hopefully, this will set the inside row for the 500, and we have the second duel race starting around 8:45, 9 p.m. Eastern, which will set the outside row. We have 36 cars guaranteed spots, 6 open drivers trying to make the 500, 40 spots available. We have 2 locked in right now from qualifying, which was Noah Gragson in the 62, and Jack Villeneuve, former champion in another series, not obviously NASCAR, but he's trying to give it a go. And he did end up making his way in, so it'll be kind of exciting to see what he does on Sunday. Then you have 4 more drivers competing for the final 2 spots. We have JJ Yaley, Timmy Hill, Greg Biffle, and Kaz Grala in a really nice looking car backed by Floyd Mayweather. But before we go even further, getting into the weeds of the strategy, the picks, and just running through the slate, we are here talking some NASCAR DFS for the duels at Daytona. And I have lots of content planned, not just for this race, which I do have quite a few things planned. I did post my content schedule over on Twitter if you want to check that out. But overall for Daytona Speed Weeks, the duels, and the race on Sunday, lots of stuff going on my channel, lots of content getting published on my Patreon, which I would highly recommend joining this season. If you were on the fence before, we usually have around a few hundred people over there. Projections, optimizers, data sheets, simulations, leverage scores, Discord chat, which is popping 24/7. We have a few hundred people over there. Highly recommend getting into the best NASCAR DFS community out there, which is a pretty good value compared to most in the industry. I'll also be quite busy on Osmo as well. I have 3 live streams planned this weekend, so if you're looking to find me, just make sure you check over on the Twitter. Content schedule is posted, and you'll know where to find me. At Pennell16 on Twitter and CPen16 over on IG. And I gotta mention the sponsor of the show, PrizePicks, is Daily Fantasy Sports Simplified. And as of right now, they are running an insane deal where if you do sign up, use the link down below or head over to PrizePicks.com. If you use promo code CPen, you get an instant deposit match up to $100. So if you deposit $25, you get $25 for free, and so on, up to $100. Make sure you take advantage of that. I do offer PrizePicks projections, the laps led, fast laps, the place differential, everything they are doing this season. And on top of that, I am offering FanDuel projections this season as well, since some of you have asked for it. So try to cover all the bases here. So I think that'll be pretty much it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into the preview of this week's race. And as previously mentioned, this is the Bluegreen Vacations Duels at Daytona. This will be the first duel race we talk about. Then we'll move right over to the second one, although the preview will stay the same. We are at Daytona International Speedway. There is your outline of the track. This is a plate race, 2.5 miles in length, and we only have 60 laps available and 42 dominator points total. And with this being Daytona, fast laps are absolutely impossible to project, so I pretty much just nerf them out of my projections, so it's basically just laps led points, and even then, those are very hit or miss as well. So for the most part, whenever we are at Daytona or a plate race kind of track, Daytona or Talladega, I simply am focusing on either place differential or finishing position. Now, typically at Daytona, I am full on place differential. That's going to be, for the most part, the strategy on Sunday, but the dual races are going to be a little bit different. These are typically more tame. There's no reason at all for these guys to want to junk up their cars, and some of these guys do not have the option to junk up their cars. Some of these guys do not have backup cars. They're short on parts right now, but the next gen car, they are just behind right now. Some of these guys cannot afford to junk their car up because they just don't really have any options to be able to make up for that. So I would expect to see some pretty tame racing for the most part. Don't expect any exciting fireworks, big ones. I think we're probably going to see single file. Now at the end, there is points in the line, and some of these guys do want some better starting spots, and some of the guys in the back, like the Biffles of the world and JJ Yaley's, they are competing for spots. So they're going to be a little bit racy because they don't want to go home without a fight. But for the most part, I would say expect a pretty tame race, and I would not be surprised at all if a lot of guys starting near the front and in the middle end up making the optimal lineup instead of a full-on place differential race. So you can plan for that in cash games. Yes, it does make sense to go with place differential, but I am not full-on stacking the back, leaving a lot of money on the table. That is for Sunday. don't think that is the route I want to go on Thursday. And I have had some success in the duels going with a similar strategy like this. And now with the next-gen cars and guys being behind on parts, I think that just even more amplifies the strategy that I am going to be talking about throughout this video. I do want to mention that one rule of thumb to always go by, or at least that I always go by, is to never play the pole setter in the duels. And the reason is because they already have their spots guaranteed for the Daytona 500, so they have absolutely no reason whatsoever to try to damage the car, which is obviously pretty fast. So Kyle Larson, he's starting the pole in one of the races, and you have Alex Bowman starting the pole in the other race. These guys are probably going to run some laps for sure, just to have their car, in traffic, see how it is. But I would assume they're going to drop back. Alex Bowman has a history of that, because I think like every single year he qualifies on the front row, and he has quite the history of starting in the very front and then dropping back for the dual race, because why risk damaging your car? Also, guys like Gregson and Villeneuve, I don't really think are going to race very hard, because why would you? They're already locked in, so I'd expect them to kind of ride around the back. Maybe they're not going to fall all the way to the back, but I would not expect them to be very racy and aggressive to gain spots, because it just doesn't really do much for them. But as far as the preview goes, that's kind of about it. I covered both dual races, so we'll dive right to the driver-by-driver breakdown portion of dual race number 1. And if you're wondering what my overall thoughts on the pricing are for this race, I mean, it's a super speedway. They're always going to be soft, and they're extremely soft here. We have no one above $10,000. We have a Kyle Larson at $7,700, which I'm kind of hoping draws in some ownership, because I think he's a pretty bad play starting on the pole. And I was actually extremely excited that Larson got the pole for Sunday's race, because it's going to be a lot of casuals playing. We have a milli maker. People are going to know that Larson won the championship last year, so I'm hoping he ends up getting pretty high ownership on the pole. I don't think it's going to be anything too insane, but probably some pretty dead lineups to begin that race with people just jamming on Larson because he's starting on the pole for a race people don't really know how to plan for. But anyway, we'll start with the upper range. All the 9K guys, Justin Haley and above here. We'll start with Chase Elliott, $9,900. Starting in third, I know we're at Daytona, so you're probably thinking all the guys starting up front, bad plays, which theoretically, yes, but the duels, it's a bit of a different strategy here, so you'll have to put the regular stack the back saying that I always say in the back of your mind until this weekend. But I like Chase Elliott quite a bit here. We know he's a good super speedway driver. He's a guy that can run up front, stay up front. Kyle Larson's on the pole. I assume he's going to stay up front a little bit, then probably drop back. I don't think he's going to want to be in the mess if there happens to be a mess at the end. We know he's got a fast car. He's starting the pole no matter what. I don't see a reason for him to push it whatsoever. So really, I think it comes down to a guy like Chase Elliott, William Byron, or Ryan Blaney potentially dominating this race for the most part. I say dominating, there's only 60 laps, but if a guy can lead like half the race, those few points can separate him a little bit from the rest of the pack, even though the fast laps are going to be kind of all over the place for the most part. And I didn't put any of the practice numbers in just because practice is irrelevant to me, and I don't want those numbers skewing your way of thoughts when you're looking at it. But Chase Elliott, obviously very good at Daytona. Past 6 races here, average finish 7th. One of the best running positions, 3 top 5s. Good chunk of laps led. I know it's not a ton, but for Daytona, it's actually not a bad number. 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s. I have no problem at all using Chase Elliott as a guy that can stay up front and potentially win this race. Same exact thing can be said for William Byron. Now, if you're looking at his numbers at Daytona, he does not have good finishes. He does have 1 win in the summer race, but he's only averaging 1.6 DraftKings points per race. Your average finish of 24.8. Running position isn't super pretty either, but he's a guy that always gets caught up in the mess. He's a guy that can get out front and lead laps. He's done that in the past, and I would not be surprised if William Byron ended up leading the most laps in this race and ended up winning. And I prefer Chase Elliott over Byron, but the Hendrick cars are going to have some speed, and since I'm not really planning for wrecks in this race, I definitely think Byron is playable. Now, I guess the question would be, do you want to play Elliott and Byron together? I don't think that's probably the most optimal way to go, but I don't hate it in tournaments. But if I'm playing cash games, I'm probably picking one or the other, and for me, I would pick Elliott. Kurt Busch, $9,400. Starting in 13th, I was watching the one practice where he was just kind of struggling to stay on the track. I mean, he's going to be fine. Starting in 13th, $9,400. He's a decent cash game play here. But again, like I said, though, I think a lot of these guys are going to end up staying where they start. Not saying some of these guys can't gain positions, but Kurt Busch is one of those guys where, yeah, the PD looks good on paper, and as far as his floor goes, I would say it's higher than Elliott and Byron, but I don't think Kurt Busch is going to be a guy that finishes in the top 5 in this race. I could see him finishing around like 8th to 12th place, which is, I mean, he's not losing spots, but under $400, I just feel like there's a little bit more upside given the race, at least how I think it's going to play out. Two guys like Elliott and Byron. I'm not saying I'm not going to play Kurt Busch. If I'm playing cash games, Kurt Busch is quite appealing. We know he's had success at super speedways in the past, and now he's on basically a Joe Gibbs car, the 2311 team, now with Bubba Wallace. And we know Bubba Wallace is a pretty good super speedway driver. He did win the last super speedway race. So Kurt Busch, definitely playable projections. Don't hate him. Ryan Blaney, $9,200. He's starting in 7th. Right now, I ran my projections, put him in the optimizer, and the two top dogs getting spit out the most right now are Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott. You know, Ryan Blaney is a fantastic plate racer, really good at Daytona, with an average finish of 9th, one of the better running positions. He's got a win, 2 top 5s, and 4 top 10s. Also won here last year in the second race of the season. And starting at 7th, get a little bit more PD upside. I do not mind pairing up with Chase Elliott whatsoever. I think both these guys could finish 1-2 in potentially the most laps. Justin Haley, $9,000. He's starting on 14th. Did get a price bump there. I hate to say price bump because the only thing we've had so far this season is the Clash, and the pricing is kind of all over the place. But Haley is not going to be $9,000 in most races this year. I'm starting on 14th. You get the PD upside. You know, Haley is a very good plate racer. He showed that in the Xfinity Series. He also has a plate win here at Daytona, albeit it was a rainstorm, but it still counts in the record book. But starting at 14th, I think Haley's fine. I don't think a lot of people are going to go his way just because the name does not really ring a $9,000 salary bell in your head. But I don't mind him if he's going to go a little bit under-owned just because of that, because he's certainly a guy that could work his way into the top 10, maybe even the top 8. I'm dropping down to the 8K range. Brad Keselowski, $8,700, starting at 9th, no longer with his Penske teammates who tend to run the show at tracks like Daytona and Talladega. Austin Cindric now is in his 2 car, but Brad Keselowski is still a great plate racer, and just because he's on a new team is not going to change that. And he's also taking over Ryan Newman's car, which if you're concerned about the car, I get it, but he's now a part owner. I think they're going to have more juice this season, but cars don't really matter at a track like Daytona, and Ryan Newman was a fantastic plate racer anyway, so I don't think we have anything to worry about here. And while he's not going to be able to team up with his Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano's of the world anymore, I still think he's going to be fine out there. $8,700 starting at 9th. I do think he's a pretty decent play. Tyler Reddick, $8,400 starting in 8th. He's one of those guys that can tend to make some stupid decisions at these types of track, but I don't really think that's going to happen in the dual race here with a lot of guys probably trying to keep it clean. I've seen one guy, Joey Logano, say that he's going to race this like the 500. We'll see if that actually happens, but for the most part, everybody else is saying that they have to be a little bit more cautious. So Reddick, starting in 8th, I would rather play Keselowski, but Tyler Reddick will have less ownership than Keselowski. Ross Chastain at $8,200. He's starting in 4th. Probably not going to have a ton of Chastain. I think he's a good turnip play just because a lot of people are not going to go his way. Because if guys are playing William Byron, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, they're not going to want to completely load up the front. And Chastain doesn't have the greatest name value, especially $8,200. I could see people leading him off a little bit, but he can be fine at super speedways. If this was regular Daytona, he's one of those guys that can be very aggressive, and he's one of those guys that could trigger the big one, but I don't really see that happening here in the duels. Austin Cindric starting us off in the 7K range. He is in 11th. I like Cindric quite a bit just because he's in that Penske squad now, and they tend to run very well at these types of tracks. He's had success here in the past. At this price point, starting mid-pack, I do think he's actually a very solid play. My projections do like him quite a bit. Kyle Larson, $7,700, starting him first. Like I said in the beginning, I think this price tag will draw some people in, because even if he does fall back, maybe people think he's only going to fall back a few spots, and $7,700 for Larson, even if he gets the top 5, might not be the worst thing out there, but I do not ever trust pole sitters in dual races, so I'm not going to change my ways of how I construct lineups here just because it's Kyle Larson. I will probably have 0 to very, very small amounts of Kyle Larson and max builds. Daniel Hemrick, $7,400, starting in 6th. Not the greatest play according to projections for me. I mean, I think he could be fine hanging around the top 10. It's just I would rather play Cole Custer for $200 cheaper, starting in 15th, and I feel like they have somewhat similar upside. Custer will be higher owned, so if you're looking for the leverage play, Daniel Hemrick's your guy, but as far as projections go and just overall the play on paper, Cole Custer is the guy for me, even though he's not my favorite driver out there. I actually kind of dislike Cole Custer, but starting in 15th, it's hard not to like him at that price point. Going to the 6K range, Chase Briscoe, bit of a risky play starting in 10th, but again, pretty much everybody in this range, maybe besides Gregson, just because he's starting so far back, or going to be tournament plays like Eric Jones. Great plate racer starting in 12th. Again, I just don't think these guys are going to be super pushy, and I feel like they're probably going to finish close to around where they start, which is not a bad thing at these price points, starting in 10th and 12th. Like if Jones finishes 11th at $6,300, starting in 12th, that's actually not bad at all. So if you're looking for tournament plays, these guys do make some sense. Daniel Suarez is probably not a guy I'm going to get a lot to, just because he's starting in 5th. I would much rather play Briscoe and Jones, but again, he's going to be one of those guys that has very low ownership, and if all these guys pretty much hold their positions for the most part, Suarez won't be a terrible play. The thing with Gregson is, I just don't think he's going to have much motivation whatsoever to really race hard. Like, if he finishes dead last, who cares, because he's already locked in. So that's why I'm probably going to be underweight on the field. Gregson here. Drop into the 5K range. Ty Gilliland, starting at 16th, $5,800. I just don't really see much happening here. I can't really see him cracking the top 15. Probably going to finish around 16th to 18th. That's probably the most likely scenario for him. Cascala's going to race his way in. He's got Floyd Mayweather's team, the money team. Got a beautiful looking car, Pit Viper. Just very, very good. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you go check it out. But I would be very shocked if he doesn't beat JJ Yeley here for these spots. So I'm just going to pretty much pencil him in. Starting 19th, I think he is probably the punt play if you guys are needing to go cheap on this slate. Castle's fine, starting in 18th. He's already locked in though. BJ McLeod starting 20th. Fine, but again, I just don't really see these guys moving up too much outside of Rex, which I'm really not planning for in this dual race. And then JJ Yeley, I think he's probably going to miss the Daytona 500. I mean, yeah, he might gain a spot or two, but I just don't really think the upside is there for Yeley. And then moving on to the second dual race, we're going to start with the 9K guys and above. Up top, we have Denny Hamlin, $10,100. He is starting in 4th, so not a lot of PD upside to work with here, but Denny Hamlin is a fantastic plate racer. He's the premier driver at Daytona the past few seasons. Tons of wins, tons of domination, just tends to perform very, very well. Starting in 4th, he's got decent starting position to work with. Not be surprised if he gets up front, leads the most laps, and wins this race. I've not seen odds yet to win each dual race, but I have to imagine Denny Hamlin would be the favorite here, with Joey Logano probably not too far behind. Kevin Harvick starting in 13th, $9,800. I also like him quite a bit because I played him the one dual race, he did me very well, and I've had a soft spot for him in dual races ever since then. But Kevin Harvick's not a guy I typically use too much at Daytona, but he tends to run pretty well here. He just usually kind of starts up high enough where I don't really have too much interest, but past 6 races at Daytona, average finish at the top 10, running position, not that bad, 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, actually somewhat pretty solid, and starting in 13th, got some PD upside. I don't think Kevin Harvick is a bad play whatsoever. Joey Logano, $9,500. I am viewing Logano as basically the same play as Denny Hamlin, and I like Denny Hamlin. Logano's a little bit cheaper. He's in a Penske car. They tend to run very, very well at these types of tracks. I know he doesn't have Brad Keselowski to work with anymore, or Ryan Blaney in this duel, so kind of on his own for the most part, outside of Harrison Burton and the Wood Brothers, which is basically a Penske affiliate there, the 4th Penske car. But I think Logano is still going to be a pretty solid play. Would not be surprised if Hamlin and Logano finish 1-2 in this race. Kyle Busch is the guy I tend to stay away from at the super speedways, and that is typically a winning strategy, although this is different because it's a dual race starting in 9th. Somewhat similar play to Kevin Harvick, just without quite the PD upside, as he is starting 4 spots further up. Not a huge fan of Kyle Busch, but he's a guy, if I'm playing 20 max, I will probably get to in some lineups. He doesn't have the nickname Ricky Spinas for nothing, but he's actually pretty darn good at the super speedways. Tends to get up front, runs very well. Now, he is a guy that can be wreckers or checkers, but again, not expecting that in this race. Starting in 16th, could be a guy that cracks the top 8, top 5, and will be a very solid play at this price point, even though I know he's $9,000, but it's not like he's 10K, and he's starting 14 spots further back than a guy like Hamlin, who I wouldn't say Stenhouse has similar finishing upside, but I wouldn't say he's that far behind. Dropping down to the 8K range, you have Martin Truex Jr., $8,700, starting in 3rd. Not really the greatest super speedway driver. I tend to fade him almost every single time, starting close to the front. He was one of the guys that did say they are going to have to take it pretty careful. I could see him kind of hanging around the top 5, and while it's not a pretty play, I wouldn't hate playing some Truex just in hopes of him staying very close to the front the entire time, but I'm not in love with the Truex play. And I pretty much have these same exact thoughts for Eric Almirola that I do Martin Truex, although I will say Almirola is a much better plate racer than Truex is. And starting in 2nd, he's going to have Bowman probably drop back at some point. Almirola could be in a pretty good position to lead some laps, win a dual race like he did last year. Austin Dillon, 8,100 bucks, starting in 10th. Another guy that's actually a pretty solid plate racer. I could see him finishing close to the top 5. I don't think he's a bad tournament play. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him because he's kind of in that no man's spot, starting around 10th place. But I do think he's actually a pretty good GPP guy. Bubba Wallace, a good play racer, pretty similar play to Austin Dillon, in my opinion. I would prefer Dillon though for just a little bit more, but pretty similar plays for the most part. Christopher Bell, 7,600 bucks. I hate to say these guys are just similar plays, but we're talking about a dual race. There's really not too much to break down here than we would have at a normal week. Like when we have practice and just regular qualifying instead of the dual races and things like that, it's a little bit easier to break the slates down, especially when they're not broken up and kind of like these heat race formats. But really, they're very similar plays, and I can see them finishing close to each other. They're both in Toyotas. They're both basically Joe Gibbs cars. Not really too much separating them here, but Bubba Wallace is actually pretty good play races, so I wouldn't hate playing some Bubba. Chris Buescher, 7,300 bucks, starting in 14th. Also good at these types of tracks, starting in 14th. I think he's a solid play, could end up cracking the top 10. Bowman is the worst play on the slate here. He is going to drop back at some point. I'd be very, very shocked if he doesn't. It would be the first time he hasn't when he starts in the pool for a dual race, so if that happens, I do apologize, but history would say to not play Alex Bowman here. I will probably end up having 0. Dropping down to the 6K range, Michael McDowell, last year's winner at the Daytona 500. Does not mean he's going to win this dual race, but I could see him kind of sticking around where he starts, which is not bad at his price point. But I am not in love with Michael McDowell here. Harrison Burton, not loving it. Again, he isn't in the 21 car for Wood Brothers, which is Penske affiliate. So if he can get hooked up with Joey Logano, that would work well for him. But he is strictly a flyer tournament play, starting in 5th place, because you get all these guys with place differential. Like you have Greg Biffle here, starting in 19th, who has to race his way in. He's got to be above Timmy Hill, which is not really a tough task, but he still has something to race for, which I just feel like Biffle was a much better play than Burton. Not the finishing position upside that he has, but definitely has a lot more safety. Ty Dillon, great Daytona, Talladega, those kind of tracks, just because he's good at staying alive and getting a good finish at the end. But again, I don't really think this is going to be a survival kind of race, so I'm not in love with Ty Dillon here, but he is a fine tournament play. I already talked about Biffle. LaJoy is one of those guys that's very good at riding around to the very end, waiting for wrecks and getting a good finish. Again, not expecting that here, so all these dumpster diving cars who are going to be very good plays on Sunday are really not the best plays on Thursday here. Cody Ware, again, just similar to LaJoy. Villeneuve is locked in, so I just don't really see myself playing much of him whatsoever, just because there's no motivation to, why would you want to finish 16th instead of 18th just to end up wrecking your car by pushing it at the end? I don't really see the scenario where you'd want to do that, so I don't really have much interest there. David Reagan starting nearly dead last in 20th. If you need a pump play, it's not bad. I don't think he's going to really lose a spot to a guy like Timmy Hill, so he's fine. But not in love with it, obviously. Then Timmy Hill here, probably going to end up missing a buddy, sorry. But I just don't see it happening. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. Sorry if it sounded like I blitzed through it, but DraftKings does not post these salaries until, 11 p.m. So I'm recording this right now at around 2:30 in the morning because I had to get all the sheets set up. So hopefully it wasn't too bad there, and there's really not just much to talk about. The Daytona dual races, it's kind of a similar strategy, and then everything kind of falls in line. But I will have the projections up in the morning. If you guys are Patreon members, I'll have the article posted pretty much in the afternoon. Austin will go up as well, and then you have the Daytona 500 to look forward to. I'm very excited for it. 3 live streams, lots to look forward to. Check out the Twitter if you want the content schedule, just so you know where I'm going to be at throughout the week. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did find this helpful in any way possible. I know it's something very small, but it does go a long way, and I truly do appreciate it. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, and if you use the link down below or head over to prizepicks.com and use code CPEN, you can get an instant deposit match bonus up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I'll get out of here. Hope you guys enjoy the dual races tonight, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday.